We're chatting with an Irish playwright, Marina Carr. She's going to be in Buffalo soon, but you can enjoy her writing twice, actually, here in Western New York. In January, the Irish Classical Theater Company is going to put on her play, The May, and that's going to be directed by Josephine Hogan at the Andrews Theater on Main Street, right across from Shays Buffalo. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on, The May coming in January. But long before that, as a matter of fact, on October 6th, she's going to be at Canisius College at the Montante Cultural Center there on Main Street, 2001 Main, for a 7 o'clock reading of her works. It's free, it's open to the public, and it's all part of the Hassett Readings. They've been doing that for 18 years, and it's also part of the Canisius College Contemporary Writers Series. So, Marina Carr, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you, Peter. I'm looking forward to my trip. I've never been to Buffalo.
Well, it's a fairly ethnic town, very, very Irish, but also very Italian, very Polish. It's a pretty friendly place. I think you'll like it here. Previously, this is the 18th season of the Hassett Readings, all part of the Contemporary Writers Series at Canisius. And in the past, we've been treated to a lot of poets. For example, Seamus Heaney was here. That was pretty special. And this time, though, you're not going to be reading poetry. You're going to be reading from your plays, or what actually, what's going to happen?
I'm going to do a reading. I mean, I read a lot, but I think a lot of people don't realize that playwrights love reading from their work as well. It's very possible. It's very possible to read your plays. So I'll be reading sections from several of my plays for the audience's delectation, I hope. Yeah, it's a public reading of my work, I suppose.
Well, I saw in your bio that in college you were not only an English major, but also a philosophy major. Got to tell you, we don't see too many of those. So what inspired your interest in philosophy? And more importantly, have you kept up with it? Has it inspired your work today?
God, it's a long time ago, Peter. Yeah, but I do. I suppose the history of ideas and why we think the way we do, and origins, and how the mind works, and what it is to be human. All of that, that's what playwriting is about. It's about people and what happens to them, and the things they do to themselves and to one another. So yes, but it is a long time since I graduated from college. And it's a long time since I read a bit of Heraclitus. I have read, there's a new biography came out on Nietzsche there a few years ago. I read that. I'm very interested in, I'm very interested in landscape as well, and writing about that, and the whole philosophy around that. And I suppose the origins of the universe, the earth, and I'm trying to learn at the minute all the different ages, and the massive extinctions, and the Devansonian period, and the whatever else, the great oxidation, and all of that, how we got started basically, and how one of the things I read recently, I hadn't known, but whales used to have hip bones. So there was about 50 million years there where whales lived on land as well as on sea. And eventually decided they'd had enough of the land, went back into the sea. Like stuff like that I find fascinating. The idea of the anthropologists talk about the development of the backbone, which happened in the sea, of course, and because of calcium levels in, I forget, but in the rocks or whatever. So the first creatures developed backbones, and of course we have backbones, because it all goes back there, and with that comes the brain and all the different brains.
Well, it does remind me, though, that in Buffalo we have an interesting series called the Babel series, where writers, international writers, are invited, 4 each year, and one of the writers is the author of The Sixth Extinction, all about the various ages. So that'll be on the 14th of October. I don't know if you're going to stick
I'll be
around in
gone by
Buffalo.
then, unfortunately.
Oh,
But
unfortunately.
I may get it online or something.
Let's get back to the Canisius Hassett Reading on October 6th. So I'm not familiar with your plays. I'm looking forward to the May when it comes, but that's about one particular woman, but it's multi-generational, and the trouble all seems to come from a man. Go figure.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, the May is about 3 generations of women in one family, and it centers on the May's relationship with her husband, and basically it's just looking at I suppose how we repeat ourselves through the generations. So you have the grandmother there, and you have the May, you have her sisters, you have the May's children, and it's just about things that get handed down without even realizing they're handed down, and how that impacts on our thinking and on our behaviors. That's what that's about. But I wrote that a long time ago. So my more recent work, which I'll be reading from, recently I had a play on in London called Girl on an Altar. And that is based, it's kind of a riff on the first play of Aeschylus's Oresteia, when Agamemnon comes home after the victory at Troy, and has to meet his wife Clytemnestra, and he has 10 years previously he has sacrificed their daughter on an altar for the wind to change so he can sail to Troy as head of the army and, be powerful overking he wishes to be. So if many of you will know the Oresteia, and there are 3 plays in it, but I'm just riffing on his homecoming and what happens between himself and his wife Clytemnestra, and the death of that child as the paramount, I suppose, traumatic experience in the marriage. And so it's about, I suppose it's a play that's about the question of forgiveness, and when is it right to forgive, and when is it wrong to forgive, and is forgiveness possible? Is there a point of no return for redemption? So it's looking at all those kind of questions, but basically it's a story of a big marriage, and going catastrophically wrong because of terrible things that are done, and how the import of those terrible things on the lives and psyches of the characters. So that's I'll be reading a bit of that. It's also another play. It was on at the Abbey last year, which I wrote, called Eyebrow. And that is, I was very flattered that you mentioned there a while back, Peter, that I was a poet. I would never call myself a poet, but this, I suppose, is the closest to poetry that I have written. So it is all these different voices from mythology and history to the contemporary female voice. And it was performed at the Abbey Theater with Alwyn Fawere. She's one of our great actors here in Ireland. You may have come across her because she has an international career as well. But she's one of our most revered actors here. And she performed the whole thing on the Abbey stage last September. So I'll be reading sections of that as well. I'll also read from a play called Hecuba, which is, again, it's a riff on Euripides' Hecuba. It's kind of my response to Euripides. The way she was much traduced in Euripides' play. She goes mad and she kills her grandchildren and howls like a dog along the shore. And I always thought that was a bit expedient, I suppose, if you consider these plays were written by what was, you know, the city state in Athens, and they were trying to start a country, and all things Greek were to be commended, and all things foreign were to be traduced, basically. So I thought I'd just give her voice and have her tell her version of what actually happened at Troy. And so that I read from that as well. Then a couple of other plays, Woman and Scarecrow, which is about a woman talking to her, basically her doppelganger, or her double, or whatever way you want to describe it, the voice we have inside ourselves that never shuts up, basically. That other voice. Got 100 other voices. That's always ga 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 ga.
Yep.
The monkey voices. So
Right.
that's about that. And I'll probably read a couple of it. It'll depend on time, you know. I don't send the folk to sleep either. So
Good.
yeah, that should be enough to keep us going. Yeah.
No, and what's the name of the first play you talked about, where Agamemnon
Yeah,
comes
Girl
home?
on an Altar.
Girl on an Altar.
Yeah.
Well, I like the way you're going to have it. Just it's just going to be the adults. We're not going to get the kids involved, because when Electric gets involved, things go south quickly.
They do. They do.
Let's give the parents a chance to talk.
Yeah, let them try and figure it out, you know. Yeah, I suppose it's about when someone you love does something so horrific, what do you do? You know?
Yeah.
What do you do? So I always thought, you know, in Aeschylus's Oresteia, which I love, but I always thought it was too quick, the way he's not in the door. She has him walking on the red carpet, and she savages him in the bath.
Yeah.
And Cassandra as well, with her double-bladed axe. So I just wanted to tease out that moment when he comes home. So I've extended it to a year.
Yeah.
So what happens?
No, looking forward to that.
Yeah.
We had a local playwright, and she wrote a play about Medusa before she was the girl with the snakes.
Yeah.
She was just an innocent acolyte, you know, a nice girl who
Zeus fell for. Yeah.
Yeah, not her fault.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those of us who fall afoul of the gods pay a terrible price.
That's it. Yeah.
Now, the other founder of the Irish Classical Theater that's still with us, and that's Vincent O'Neill, he described Irish plays as laughter through the tears. And would you go along with that?
Well, it's constantly changing. Yeah, well, you know what the cliche they say about the Irish, you know, all their wars are merry and all their songs are sad. I think we do tragedy really well in this country. I think we have a very tragic history. And you know, there's even things that have happened, you know, in the last couple of 100 years. There's still not much spoken about. They are in some circles, but not. They haven't entered into the national debate as you know, in the proportions they should have. I think, you know, and I think there's a lot of buried trauma in the country, that hasn't been unpacked. So yes, we do, and humor is a great way of deflecting, of course, from things that wound. But we also do have, I suppose, an anarchic sense of humor and joy and wildness. It must be the island mentality, and looking out at the sea and the rocks and the mermaids and the ghosts and the whole lot of it. And also, I suppose, with a very particular relationship with the English language, as every conquered civilization has with the language of the conqueror. So we have molded it to suit our own purposes, and I think we take great pride in that. The way we use English. So, yeah.
Great. Well, I could talk to you all day, but we have to let you go. just before then, I have to tell you, Vincent O'Neill was going to take a bunch of us on a trip to Ireland. That was, I think it was 3 years ago. And then COVID intervened. And then we were going to do it again, and COVID intervened. And then we thought maybe a third chance would, third time's a charm, but it just didn't happen. So we didn't get to come to you, but I'm so glad that you're coming to us.
Well, you know what? It's great because I'm in Kerry at the minute, and I was in Killarney yesterday, and it is full of Americans. It was great to hear all the American accents back because, you know, for a couple of years, the country was empty because of COVID. Right. But they're all back, and the streets were full of them, and they were shopping, and they were having coffee, and they were, you know, wandering around buying iron sweaters and looking at restaurants and really happy, you know. It was great.
Okay.
They're all back. Long may it last.
Well, something to plan for. And before I wrap this up, let me just remind everyone listening, once again, Marina Carr will be reading from her plays, one night only. It's free, open to the public. It's part of the Hassett Reading series, the 18th annual Hassett Reading, as a matter of fact, part of the Canisius College Contemporary Writers series. That takes place in the Montante Cultural Center, 2001 Main Street here in Buffalo. Doors open at 6:30. The reading commences at 7. There'll be a nice little reception afterwards, and they say that you'll answer questions from the audience. Good.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully.
as long as they're not on race or gender. Okay. Because those two areas now are just a minefield, and nobody can say anything correct on either topic. But any other questions I'll take.
Okay. And then, of course, your play, The May, that's spelled M-A-I, will be produced by the Irish Classical Theater. And they're going to put that on from January 13th to February 5th at the Andrews Theater on Main Street. Marina Carr, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you. Looking forward to actually hearing you in person. Love that accent.
Thank you, Peter. Lovely talking to you too.